Wounded bear. Cub appears at a summer camp. How the baby helped will melt your heart. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The sun was setting over Camp Pinewood, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. The tall pine trees cast long shadows across the clearing where wooden cabins housed excited children for the summer. The air smelled of freshly cut grass and marshmallows roasting over the evening campfire. Olivia Reed, a camp counselor with gentle eyes and a warm smile, watched over the children as they gathered sticks for the fire. Her 1-year-old son Noah sat on a colorful blanket nearby, babbling happily to himself as he played with wooden blocks. 10 minutes until campfire stories, called out Marcus, the head counselor, his deep voice carrying across the grounds. The children squealed with excitement, rushing to finish their chores before the evening's entertainment began. Olivia glanced at her son, who had stopped playing and was staring intently at something beyond the tree line. His small face looked curious, his head tilted slightly to one side. She followed his gaze but saw nothing unusual among the dense trees that surrounded the camp. "What do you see, little one?" she murmured, brushing back his soft brown curls. The answer came moments later when a rustling sound emerged from the underbrush. Olivia tensed, instinctively moving closer to Noah. The bushes parted, and a small black bear cub stumbled into the clearing. Its fur was matted on one side, and it moved with obvious difficulty, favoring its right front paw. "Marcus," Olivia called out, trying to keep her voice steady. "We have a visitor." The camp fell silent. Children froze mid-step, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder. Marcus appeared at Olivia's side, his normally relaxed posture now rigid with concern. "Nobody move," he whispered. "Where there's a cub, there's a mama bear." The wounded cub whimpered softly, taking another unsteady step into the clearing. A trail of small bloodstains marked its path, dark against the green grass. Its eyes, round and frightened, darted around at the frozen humans. "Call the ranger station," Marcus instructed one of the junior counselors, who nodded and backed away slowly toward the main office. Olivia reached for Noah, intending to pull him safely into her arms, but to her horror, her son had already begun crawling toward the injured animal. Her heart leapt into her throat. "Noah!" she gasped, afraid to shout and startle the cub. "Noah, come back!" But the baby continued forward, his small hands patting the ground as he moved with surprising speed toward the bear cub. The children watched in stunned silence. Some covered their eyes, unable to look. Others couldn't tear their gaze away from the unfolding scene. The bear cub noticed Noah's approach and let out another whimper, this one softer than before. It lowered itself to the ground, its injured paw held awkwardly to the side. A deep cut was visible on its leg, still oozing blood. "Everyone back to the cabins," Marcus ordered in a hushed voice. Slowly, no sudden movements. The children began to retreat, their footsteps nearly silent on the soft ground. But Olivia couldn't move. Her son was now just a few feet from the wild animal, and her maternal instinct screamed at her to rush forward and snatch him away. Yet something held her back. The cub wasn't showing any signs of aggression. If anything, it seemed almost as curious about Noah as the baby was about it. "Marcus, what do we do?" Olivia whispered, her fingers gripping his arm so tightly they left marks. Before Marcus could answer, Noah reached the cub. The adults held their breath, time seeming to stand still as the baby's small hand hovered in the air, then gently touched the cub's nose. The cub flinched but didn't pull away. Instead, it made a soft, almost purring sound. Noah giggled, delighted by this response, and patted the cub's head as if it were one of his stuffed animals. "I don't believe what I'm seeing," Marcus murmured. The forest behind them remained silent. No sign of an angry mother bear charging to protect her young. Just the gentle sounds of a baby's laughter and a wounded cub's soft breathing. "The ranger won't be here for at least 30 minutes, the junior counselor reported, returning from the office. His voice faltered as he took in the scene before him. Should I try to get the baby?" Olivia shook her head slightly. "He's not afraid." And the cub, it seems almost relieved. As they watched, Noah sat down beside the cub, his chubby legs folding underneath him. The cub stretched out its neck, sniffing at the baby's colorful overalls. Noah reached out again, this time his fingers brushing against the cub's injured paw. The animal winced, but didn't pull away. "It's like he knows," Olivia whispered. "Like he knows the cub is hurt." A twig snapped in the forest, and everyone tensed again. The trees seemed to hold their breath along with the humans as they waited for the mother bear to appear. But the forest remained still, the only movement coming from Noah as he continued to pat the cub with gentle touches. The sun dipped lower behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the camp. In the fading light, the unlikely pair, a human baby and a bear cub, sat together in the middle of the clearing, connected by something the adults couldn't quite understand. "We need to do something about that wound," Marcus finally said, "before it gets infected." Olivia nodded, her eyes never leaving her son. "The first aid kit is in my cabin. Do you think—" "I'll get it," offered Emma, another counselor who had remained nearby. "But how will we treat a wild animal?" As if in answer to her question, the cub laid its head down on the grass next to Noah, its eyes half closing in apparent trust. The baby leaned forward, planting a wet kiss on the cub's ear, completely unaware of the danger or the miracle he was part of. In that moment, under the darkening sky with stars beginning to appear overhead, the boundaries between wild and tame, dangerous and safe, seemed to blur. A baby's innocent compassion had created a bridge that no adult could have built, reaching across species to offer comfort to a creature in pain. And somewhere in the surrounding forest, a mother bear had not appeared, leaving everyone at Camp Pinewood to wonder where she was, and what twist this unusual evening might take next. The stars had fully emerged now, twinkling against the dark canvas of the night sky. Emma returned with the first aid kit, her steps careful and measured as she approached Olivia. The counselors exchanged nervous glances, unsure how to proceed. The bear cub remained surprisingly calm beside Noah, who was now patting its head in rhythmic motions, completely oblivious to the tension surrounding him. "I've never seen anything like this," whispered Emma, handing the white box to Olivia. "It's like they understand each other." Olivia nodded, taking a deep breath to steady her nerves. "I'm going to try to get closer. If the cub shows any sign of aggression, be ready to distract it while I grab Noah." Marcus positioned himself nearby, a long stick in hand, not as a weapon, but as a potential diversion if needed. The remaining children had been ushered to the safety of the main lodge, but a few curious faces peered out from windows, their expressions a mixture of fear and wonder. Olivia inched forward, the first aid kit clutched tightly in her trembling hands. "Hey there, little one," she spoke softly, addressing both her son and the injured cub. Noah looked up at his mother's voice, his face breaking into a wide, toothless grin. "Mama," he babbled happily, then returned his attention to his new friend. The bear cub lifted its head slightly, dark eyes regarding Olivia with wary curiosity. It made no move to retreat or attack, which gave her the courage to close the final distance between them. She knelt beside her son, placing a protective arm around his small shoulders. "You've made a friend, haven't you?" she murmured, her eyes filling with tears at the innocence of the moment. Then, to the cub, "We want to help you. That cut looks painful." As if understanding her words, the cub extended its injured paw slightly. The wound was deeper than Olivia had initially thought, a jagged gash that ran from the joint down to the pad. Something glinted in the moonlight, caught within the matted fur. "There's something in there," she told Marcus, who had edged closer. "Looks like metal? Maybe a piece of an old trap?" The revelation sent a chill through the small group. Illegal trapping had been reported in the national forest surrounding the camp, despite rangers' best efforts to stop it. If this cub had been caught in a trap, it explained not only the injury, but possibly also the absence of its mother. "Poor thing," Emma whispered, her earlier fear replaced by compassion. "No wonder it came to us for help." With Noah's continued presence seemingly keeping the cub calm, Olivia carefully opened the first aid kit. "I need to clean the wound and see if I can remove whatever's stuck in there. Marcus, can you call the ranger again? Tell them what we've found. They'll need to bring proper equipment." While Marcus retreated to make the call, Olivia prepared gauze soaked in antiseptic. She hesitated, uncertain how the wild animal would react to the sting of medication on its open wound. "Noah, sweetie, can you keep petting your friend?" she encouraged, hoping her son's touch would continue to soothe the cub. Noah giggled in response, placing both hands on the cub's head and making soft cooing sounds. The cub's eyes remained fixed on the baby, seemingly drawing comfort from his presence. With a silent prayer, Olivia gently pressed the antiseptic-soaked gauze to the wound. The cub flinched, a low whine escaping its throat. Noah immediately leaned closer, placing a sloppy kiss on the animal's ear. Remarkably, the cub settled, allowing Olivia to continue cleaning around the injury. "That's it," she encouraged, working carefully to remove dried blood and dirt from the fur. "You're being so brave." As she worked, the metal object became more visible, the jagged edge of a snare wire, embedded in the cub's flesh. Anger flashed through Olivia at the thought of poachers setting such cruel devices in the forest. "I can't remove this myself," she told Emma. "It's in too deep, and I might cause more damage if I try." A sudden rustling from the trees made them all freeze. This time, the sound was more deliberate, heavier, the unmistakable movement of a large animal. Olivia's heart raced as she instinctively pulled Noah closer to her body. "The mother," Emma whispered, her face pale in the moonlight. But what emerged from the shadows wasn't the cub's mother. Instead, a tall, bearded man in a flannel shirt and worn jeans stepped into the clearing. A rifle was slung across his back, and his expression hardened as he took in the scene before him. "Found my bear, I see," he called out, his gruff voice shattering the peaceful tableau. Marcus, returning from making the call, positioned himself between the newcomer and the small group around the cub. "Who are you?" he demanded, his normally friendly demeanor replaced by protective authority. "Name's Garrett," the man replied, taking another step forward. "Been tracking this little thief for 2 days now. Its mama was caught in one of my traps yesterday. Prime pelt, that one. This little one got away with just a scratch." He patted the rifle on his back. "Won't get far with that injury, though." Horror washed over Olivia as understanding dawned. This wasn't a case of the cub wandering away from its mother. This man had killed its mother and was now hunting the baby bear for its fur. The cub wasn't just injured, it was orphaned. "You're poaching on protected land," Marcos stated, his voice firm. "The rangers are already on their way." Garrett's weather-beaten face darkened. Rangers don't patrol this section much. Besides, by the time they get here, I'll be gone, and so will that cub." His hand moved toward his rifle. Noah, sensing the tension, began to whimper. The cub pressed closer to the baby, as if seeking protection from the human who had caused it so much pain. The sight strengthened Olivia's resolve. "You're not taking this cub," she declared, standing to face the poacher. The other counselors moved to join her, forming a human barrier between Garrett and the injured animal. Garrett laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the clearing. "And who's going to stop me? A bunch of summer camp counselors and a baby." Before anyone could respond, another sound came from the forest. A low, rumbling growl that seemed to vibrate through the ground beneath their feet. Everyone, including Garrett, turned toward the source of the noise. From between the trees, a massive shape emerged, a full-grown black bear, its fur shimmering in the moonlight. But it wasn't a female as they had expected. This was a male bear, larger than any Olivia had ever seen, with a distinctive white patch on its chest. The cub let out a soft mewling sound, but didn't move from Noah's side. The adult bear's eyes swept across the clearing, taking in the humans, the injured cub, and finally settling on Garrett. Its lips pulled back to reveal long, yellowed teeth. "Don't move," Marcus whispered, though it was unclear whether he was addressing his fellow counselors or the poacher. Garrett's hand had frozen halfway to his rifle. The enormous bear took another step forward, its growl deepening. Then, to everyone's astonishment, it rose onto its hind legs, towering over 7 feet tall, a terrifying display of power and dominance. "What the hell?" Garrett muttered, his earlier confidence evaporating. "That's not the mother. I got her yesterday, unless ... Unless you killed a different bear," Emma finished for him, her voice barely audible. The standoff continued for what felt like an eternity, the massive bear upright and threatening, the humans paralyzed with fear, and the cub and baby still huddled together on the ground. No one dared to move, to breathe too deeply, to do anything that might trigger the adult bear's aggression. Then, something truly remarkable happened. Noah, apparently bored with staying still, broke the silence with a cheerful babble. He pointed at the large bear and made a series of sounds that, while unintelligible to the adults, seemed to hold meaning for the bears. The cub raised its head, looking between Noah and the adult bear. And the adult bear, the enormous, terrifying predator that had everyone frozen in fear, slowly lowered itself back to all fours. It sniffed the air, then began to approach. Not toward Garrett, as everyone had feared, but directly toward Noah and the cub. "Oh, God," Olivia whispered, her maternal instinct screaming at her to grab her baby and run. But something in the bear's demeanor kept her rooted to the spot. There was no aggression in its movements, no bared teeth or raised hackles. Instead, it moved with deliberate care, as if mindful of the frightened humans in its path. Taking advantage of the distraction, Garrett began to slowly back away toward the forest edge. Marcus noticed and opened his mouth to call out, but Emma quickly placed a hand on his arm, shaking her head. Let the poacher flee. They had bigger concerns at the moment. The adult bear reached Noah and the cub, lowering its massive head to nuzzle the injured young one. The cub responded with a series of soft whimpers, pressing against the larger bear's muzzle. Noah, completely unfazed, reached out to pat the adult bear just as he had done with the cub. "It's the father," Olivia breathed, understanding dawning. Male bears don't usually care for their cubs, but sometimes they do. The large bear turned its attention to Noah, sniffing the baby's outstretched hand. For a heart-stopping moment, Olivia thought she'd made a terrible mistake in not fleeing. Then, impossibly, the bear gently licked Noah's fingers, causing the baby to burst into delighted giggles. "I've never seen anything like this," Marcus murmured, his earlier fear giving way to awe. "It's like they're communicating." The bear then did something even more surprising. It lowered itself to the ground beside the cub and Noah, creating a protective semicircle around them both. Its dark eyes, intelligent and surprisingly gentle, looked up at Olivia with what could only be described as an expectant expression. "I think—" Olivia swallowed hard, barely believing what she was about to suggest. "I think he wants us to help the cub." Emma's eyes widened. "That's impossible. Bears don't seek human help." "Maybe not usually," Marcus replied, his voice tinged with wonder. "But nothing about this situation is usual." Taking a deep breath, Olivia knelt once more beside her son, now sandwiched between two bears, one small and injured, one enormous and potentially deadly. She reopened the first aid kit, her hands steadier now. "I'm going to try again with the wound," she announced quietly. "Emma, there's a pair of tweezers in there. I might be able to get that wire out after all." As she worked, the adult bear remained perfectly still, occasionally making low rumbling sounds that seemed to soothe the cub when the pain became too much. Noah continued his unintelligible babbling, patting both bears as if they were oversized pets. With painstaking care, Olivia managed to grasp the end of the wire with the tweezers. "This is going to hurt," she warned, though she wasn't sure if she was speaking to the cub or to herself. With a quick, decisive motion, she extracted the jagged metal from the wound. The cub let out a yelp of pain, pressing closer to the adult bear for comfort. Fresh blood welled from the injury, but Olivia was ready with clean gauze. As she pressed it against the wound, the adult bear leaned forward, its massive tongue extending to lick at the cub's paw. The natural antiseptic properties of the bear's saliva, combined with Olivia's first aid efforts, seemed to provide relief. The cub's tense muscles gradually relaxed. "Almost done," Olivia murmured, applying antibiotic ointment to the cleaned wound. She then wrapped the paw with a light bandage, just enough to keep dirt out while allowing the cub mobility. "There. That should hold until the rangers arrive." As if on cue, distant headlights appeared on the camp's access road. The rangers were finally arriving, but what would they make of this unprecedented scene? Would they understand, or would they see only the danger of wild predators so close to children? The adult bear seemed to sense the approaching vehicles. It rose to its feet, nudging the cub gently. The young bear stood, testing its bandaged paw on the ground. It seemed to hold, though the cub still favored its other legs. Noah made a sound of protest as his furry friends prepared to leave. He reached out, his small face crumpling in the beginning of a tantrum. The cub turned back, pressing its nose to Noah's hand one last time. Then, with the adult bear leading the way, both animals melted back into the darkness of the forest. Moments later, 2 ranger vehicles pulled into the clearing, their headlights sweeping across the group of stunned counselors. Olivia lifted Noah into her arms, holding him close as she tried to process what they had just experienced. "You're not going to believe what happened here," Marcus told the approaching rangers who were already taking in the unusual scene, the scattered first aid supplies, the small bloodstains on the grass, and the expressions of wonder on everyone's faces. "Try us," replied the lead ranger, a woman with salt and pepper hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "We got a report about an injured bear cub, possible poachers, and—" She checked her notes with a raised eyebrow. "A baby who somehow made friends with the bears." Olivia nodded, still holding Noah tightly. That's exactly what happened. And there's more. We have information about a poacher named Garrett. He killed a female bear yesterday and was tracking this cub. He had a rifle and admitted everything. The ranger's expression hardened. We've been after someone who's been setting illegal traps in this area for months. Can you describe him? As the adults began sharing information with the rangers, Noah squirmed in Olivia's arms, pointing toward the forest where his unusual friends had disappeared. "Bah," he said clearly, his first recognizable word. "Bah." Olivia kissed the top of his head, tears welling in her eyes. In the midst of danger and fear, her son had formed a connection that defied explanation. A bond of innocent compassion that had not only saved a wounded cub, but had somehow communicated trust to one of nature's most feared predators. "Yes, baby," she whispered. "Bear, your special friend." The rangers spread out, some heading into the forest to search for signs of the poacher, others examining the area where the cub had been treated. The camp counselors gathered the remaining supplies, still speaking in hushed, reverent tones about what they had witnessed. "Will the cub be okay?" Emma asked the female ranger, who was carefully collecting a sample of blood from the grass. "Hard to say," the ranger replied honestly. "But with that bandage and the adult male looking after it, its chances are better than they would have been. We'll track them, make sure the wound doesn't get infected." "The adult bear, is it common for males to care for cubs?" Marcus inquired. The ranger shook her head. "Not common at all. In fact, male bears are sometimes a threat to cubs, but there are exceptions. Bears that form unusual bonds or behave in ways we don't fully understand. Nature is full of surprises." Indeed, nature had surprised them all tonight. As the camp gradually returned to normal, children being reassured, the campfire finally lit for a much-delayed evening program. Olivia couldn't help but feel that something profound had shifted in her understanding of the world. In the days that followed, the story of Noah and the bears would spread throughout the camp and beyond, gaining embellishments with each retelling. But for those who had witnessed it firsthand, no embellishment was necessary. The truth of a baby's fearless compassion, a wounded cub's trust, and a father bear's unexpected protection was more extraordinary than any tale they could invent. And somewhere in the dark forest surrounding Camp Pinewood, a bandaged cub limped alongside its father, both bears carrying the scent of humans who had helped rather than harmed. A memory as surprising to them as the night's events had been to the humans they'd encountered. The incident would change Camp Pinewood forever. It would change Olivia and Marcus and Emma, and especially little Noah, though he was too young to know it yet. But for now, as the stars continued their silent journey across the night sky, all was peaceful once more. The natural world and the human one having shared a moment of connection that few would ever be fortunate enough to experience. Morning arrived at Camp Pinewood with golden sunlight filtering through the trees. The events of the previous night seemed almost dreamlike in the warm glow of day. Yet the trampled grass where the bears had stood and the remains of bloody gauze in the medical waste bin confirmed the reality of what had transpired. Olivia had barely slept, replaying the extraordinary encounter in her mind while Noah slumbered peacefully beside her, occasionally murmuring, "Bah," in his dreams. She rose early, carrying her still sleeping son outside to watch the sunrise. The forest edge looked different to her now, less a boundary between safety and danger, more a threshold to another world that had momentarily opened to them. "You're up early," Marcus said, approaching with 2 steaming mugs of coffee. His eyes were ringed with shadow, suggesting he'd had as little sleep as she had. "How's our little bear whisperer?" Olivia accepted the coffee gratefully. "Still sleeping. I keep expecting him to wake up and forget all about it, but—" She trailed off, recalling Noah's new word and the way he had pointed toward the forest before falling asleep. Marcus settled beside her on the wooden bench outside her cabin. The rangers called. They found blood trails leading deep into the forest, probably from the cub. They're tracking it to make sure the bandage is holding. And the poacher? Marcus's expression darkened. No sign of him yet, but they found his campsite about 2 miles from here. Ranger Wilson said there was evidence he'd been processing animal pelts there. He paused, his knuckles whitening around his mug. They also found what was left of a female bear, just like he said. Olivia closed her eyes briefly, pained by the confirmation of the mother bear's death. That poor cub. At least it has its father. That's the thing. Marcus leaned forward, his voice dropping despite there being no one else awake to hear them. Wilson says it's extraordinarily rare for a male bear to care for a cub like that. He wants to bring a wildlife biologist to study them. Says it could be an important discovery for understanding bear behavior. Olivia wasn't sure how she felt about that. The moment they had shared with the bears felt sacred somehow, not something to be dissected by scientific observation. Before she could voice this thought, however, the camp's morning bell began to ring, signaling the start of a new day. "What do we tell the children?" she asked as they rose to begin their duties. Marcus considered this. The truth, but carefully. They saw something magical last night, something few people ever experience. I don't want to diminish that, but I also don't want them thinking they can approach wild bears. Olivia nodded in agreement. Noah stirred in her arms, his eyes fluttering open. He immediately twisted in her grip, looking toward the forest with an expectant expression. "Bear?" he questioned, pointing a chubby finger at the trees. "No bears right now, sweetie," she told him gently. They had to go home. Noah's face fell, his lower lip trembling. Before he could begin crying, Emma appeared, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, dark circles under her eyes matching those of the other counselors. "The rangers are back," she announced, "and they've brought someone with them." Olivia and Marcus exchanged glances before heading toward the camp entrance. The children were beginning to emerge from their cabins, their excited chatter filling the morning air as they discussed the previous night's events, each version more elaborate than the last. At the main gate, 3 ranger vehicles were parked. Ranger Wilson, the woman with salt and pepper hair who had led the team the night before, was in deep conversation with a tall, slender man wearing the khaki clothing and carrying a large camera with an impressive telephoto lens. Beside them stood another man, older, with deep creases around his eyes and silver hair pulled back in a long ponytail. His weathered skin and solemn expression gave him a distinguished appearance that commanded immediate respect. Ranger Wilson waved them over. "Miss Reed, Mr. Hayes, this is Dr. Lawrence Chen, wildlife biologist from the university." She gestured to the man with the camera, who nodded in greeting. "And this is Raymond Blackfeather, elder from the Nipmuc tribe whose ancestral lands include this forest." Raymond. Blackfeather stepped forward, his dark eyes studying each of them intently before settling on Noah. A smile softened his serious expression. "This is the child," he said. It wasn't a question. Olivia instinctively held Noah closer. "Yes, this is my son. How did you know?" "The rangers called me when they heard what happened." Such a story travels quickly. He extended a weathered hand toward Noah, who immediately reached for it with curious fingers. "Our people have lived alongside the bears for countless generations. We have stories of such encounters, though few in recent times." Dr. Chen cleared his throat, clearly eager to interject. "Ms. Reed, the rangers tell me your son had an unprecedented interaction with not only a bear cub, but an adult male bear, possibly its father. I'd very much like to interview you about the experience, and perhaps set up some observation equipment near where you last saw them enter the forest." Before Olivia could respond, Raymond Blackfeather spoke again. "The bears did not reveal themselves to be studied, Doctor. Chen, they came seeking help, and once received, they returned to their world." His tone was gentle but firm. Dr. Chen frowned. "With all due respect, Mr. Blackfeather, this could be a significant opportunity for scientific—" "Raymond," the elder corrected, "and I do not oppose your science. I merely suggest that some encounters are meant to be honored rather than examined." The tension between the two men was palpable. Ranger Wilson stepped in diplomatically. "We're primarily concerned with the cub's welfare and locating the poacher. Dr. Chen's observations might help with both." While the adults discussed, Noah began squirming in Olivia's arms, reaching toward the forest with increasing determination. "Bear," he insisted, more forcefully this time. Olivia was about to soothe him when a sound caught everyone's attention. A rustling in the underbrush at the forest's edge, just visible from the camp entrance. All conversation ceased as they turned toward the noise. From between the trees emerged a figure, but not the bears they half expected. Instead, a man stumbled into view, his clothes torn, his face scratched and smeared with dirt. It took Olivia a moment to recognize him as Garrett, the poacher from the night before. He was limping badly, his right leg dragging behind him, and his rifle was noticeably absent. Ranger Wilson immediately reached for her sidearm, but paused when she saw the man's condition. Garrett collapsed to his knees just outside the tree line, his eyes wide with something beyond fear, a primal terror that made him look almost unrecognizable from the confident, threatening figure of the previous night. "Help me," he gasped, his voice hoarse and desperate. "It's still out there." Two rangers approached him cautiously, hands on their weapons. "What happened to you?" Ranger Wilson demanded, keeping a safe distance. Garrett's eyes darted back toward the forest. "The bear. It followed me. Not like any bear I've ever seen. It knew what I did. It knew." His words dissolved into incoherent mumbling as the rangers carefully helped him to his feet. "He's in shock," one of the rangers observed. "Needs medical attention." As they led Garrett toward one of the vehicles, Raymond stepped closer to Olivia and Noah. "The forest takes care of its own," he said quietly, "and it seems the father bear has his own sense of justice." Dr. Chen was already making notes in a small book he'd pulled from his pocket. "Fascinating. Could indicate territorial defense or perhaps even retribution behavior. I've read about bears developing vendettas against specific humans, but it's rarely documented outside of grizzlies." Raymond gave the scientist a measured look. "There are things in these woods older than your science, Doctor." Noah had calmed somewhat, but his eyes remained fixed on the forest, as if expecting something, or someone, to appear. Olivia bounced him gently in her arms, trying to distract him. "The rangers will take care of the bears now, sweetie. They'll make sure the cub gets better." "Actually," Ranger Wilson rejoined them after Garrett had been secured in one of the vehicles, "we haven't been able to locate either bear yet. We found tracks leading deeper into the old-growth section, but they disappeared near the river. It's as if they vanished." Raymond nodded, unsurprised. "They have gone to the sacred places. They will not be found unless they wish to be." Dr. Chen looked skeptical but held his tongue, perhaps sensing he was outnumbered. "Ms. Reed," he addressed Olivia directly, "would you be willing to show me exactly where the interaction took place? Any fur samples or physical evidence would be invaluable." Before Olivia could answer, A commotion erupted from the main area of the camp. Emma came running toward them, her expression a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "You need to come see this," she called. "All of you." They followed her back to the central clearing where the bear cub had first appeared. The campers, now fully awake, had formed a circle around something on the ground. As the adults approached, the children parted to reveal what had captured their attention. In the center of the clearing, precisely where Noah and the cub had sat together, lay a small pile of objects. 3 perfect pine cones arranged in a triangle, a collection of bright red berries, and most surprisingly a large, pristine black feather that seemed to shimmer with blue highlights in the morning sun. "The children found it when they came out for breakfast," Emma explained, her voice hushed with wonder. "Nobody saw who left it." Raymond Blackfeather approached the arrangement slowly, his expression reverent. He knelt beside it, running his fingers over the feather without touching it. "A raven's feather," he murmured. "The messenger between worlds." Dr. Chen opened his mouth as if to offer a scientific explanation, then closed it again, clearly puzzled by the deliberate arrangement of the items. Ranger Wilson voiced what everyone was thinking. Could the bears have... She trailed off, the suggestion sounding impossible even as she made it. "Bears don't collect objects and arrange them symbolically," Dr. Chen stated firmly, finding his voice. "This is obviously someone from the camp trying to create a mystique around last night's events." Marcus shook his head. "The clearing has been empty since dawn. I've been in the main lodge preparing breakfast with the kitchen staff. Everyone else was either in their cabins or with you at the entrance." A hush fell over the group as they contemplated the mysterious offering. Noah, who had been watching with curious eyes, suddenly began squirming vigorously in Olivia's arms, reaching toward the arrangement with determined hands. "Bay!" he insisted. "Bay!" Olivia carefully lowered him to the ground, keeping a supportive hand on his back as he crawled toward the objects. The adults watched, transfixed, as Noah reached for the feather. Instead of grabbing it, he gently stroked it with one finger, just as he had done with the bear cub's fur. Then, to everyone's astonishment, he sat back and made a series of sounds. Not random baby babble, but something that sounded almost like a pattern, a primitive form of communication. Raymond Blackfeather's eyes widened. He knelt beside Noah, listening intently to the sounds. After a moment, he made a similar sound in response, a soft, rhythmic series of syllables that made Noah giggle with apparent recognition. "What was that?" Olivia asked, fascinated and slightly unnerved by the exchange. Raymond looked up at her, his expression serious yet filled with wonder. "An old greeting. A very old greeting. My grandfather taught it to me when I was a boy. He said it was how our ancestors first spoke to the animal people, before words came between us." He looked back at Noah with newfound respect. "Your son remembers what most of us have forgotten." Dr. Chen was furiously taking notes, his scientific skepticism warring with the undeniable strangeness of what was unfolding before him. The arrangement of objects could be territorial marking, he suggested, though his tone lacked conviction. And the child could be mimicking sounds he heard from the bears last night. "Perhaps," Raymond agreed mildly. "Or perhaps there is more happening here than can be explained by your science alone." As the adults debated, Noah continued to examine the mysterious gifts, handling each one with surprising gentleness for a child his age. When he reached the berries, he picked one up, studying it with intense concentration before offering it to his mother. Olivia hesitated, unsure if the berry was safe. Raymond noticed her concern. "Bearberry," he identified. "Not for eating raw, but important medicine for our people. Used for healing wounds." He looked meaningfully at her. Like the wound of a small bear, perhaps. Ranger Wilson cleared her throat. I hate to interrupt whatever's happening here, but we need to get Garrett to a hospital and file reports about last night's poaching incident. She turned to Olivia and Marcus. We'll need formal statements from both of you and anyone else who witnessed the bears. The mention of official procedures broke the spell that had fallen over the clearing. The children, sensing the magical moment was passing, began to drift toward the dining hall, though many cast lingering glances at Noah and the mysterious arrangement. Of course, Marcus agreed. We'll cooperate however we can. As they prepared to follow Ranger Wilson, Raymond placed a hand on Olivia's arm. Your son has been touched by something powerful, he told her quietly. In our traditions, such an encounter would mark him as someone special, someone who can walk between worlds. What does that mean for him? Olivia asked, suddenly fearful for her son's future. Raymond's expression softened. It means he will see things others cannot, feel connections others miss. It is a gift, though not always an easy one. He reached into a pouch at his belt and withdrew a small object, a carved wooden bear pendant on a leather cord. This was mine as a child. Now it should be his, when he is old enough not to swallow it. Olivia accepted the gift with trembling hands, oddly moved by the elder's generosity. Thank you. I don't know what to make of any of this, but thank you. As they walked back toward the ranger vehicles, Dr. Chen fell into step beside Olivia. Miss Reed, he began, his tone more respectful than before, I understand your reservations about scientific observation, but what happened here could be incredibly significant. The behavior of the male bear alone defies everything we understand about ursine parental instincts. Noah, still in Olivia's arms, was drowsing against her shoulder, exhausted from the excitement. I'm not opposed to helping your research, Dr. Chen, she replied carefully. But my son's welfare comes first, and honestly, I'm not sure I want those bears disturbed. They've suffered enough, don't you think? Before the biologist could respond, a shout came from one of the rangers who had been examining the forest edge. Wilson, you need to see this. Everyone hurried over to where the ranger stood, pointing at something on the ground. There, clearly visible in a patch of soft earth, was a large bear track, much larger than would be expected even from the impressive male they had encountered. Beside it, perfectly aligned, was a smaller print. The bandaged paw of the cub, the fabric of Olivia's makeshift dressing having left a distinctive pattern in the soil. These are fresh, the ranger said, excitement in his voice. Made within the last hour, and look, they circle the entire camp perimeter. Dr. Chen knelt to examine the tracks, measuring them with a small ruler he produced from his pocket. This can't be right, he muttered. The adult print is nearly 15 inches across. That would make it one of the largest black bears ever recorded in this region. Raymond Blackfeather nodded solemnly. In our stories, the great bear walks the forest when important changes are coming, when the boundary between worlds grows thin. Ranger Wilson looked skeptical, but respectful. Whatever size it is, we need to track it. A bear that large could be dangerous, especially if it's getting comfortable around humans. It had every opportunity to harm us last night, Marcus pointed out. Instead, it trusted us with its cub. Nevertheless, Wilson replied firmly, standard protocol requires us to locate and monitor any bear showing unusual behavior around human settlements. As the rangers discussed their tracking plans, Noah suddenly jerked awake in Olivia's arms. His eyes flew open, and he pointed toward the forest with absolute certainty. "Bay!" he exclaimed, more clearly than ever. "Bay dare!" Everyone turned to look where he was pointing. At first, Olivia saw nothing but trees and shadows. Then, as her eyes adjusted, she caught a glimpse of movement, a dark shape that seemed both solid and somehow ethereal, watching from between ancient trunks. Beside it, a smaller shadow moved restlessly, its front paw held slightly above the ground. Dr. Chen fumbled with his camera, trying to capture the sighting, but by the time he raised the lens, the shapes had melted away into the deeper forest. "Did you see that?" Emma whispered, her voice tinged with awe. Raymond Blackfeather nodded, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. They came to say goodbye and perhaps to give thanks. Noah was struggling vigorously now, clearly wanting to be put down. Against her better judgment, Olivia lowered him to the ground, keeping a tight hold on his overall straps. To her surprise, he didn't crawl toward the forest as she had feared. Instead, he sat down exactly where he was, placed his small hands on the earth, and bent forward until his forehead touched the ground. A gesture so deliberate, so unlike a baby's usual movements, that it silenced everyone watching. After holding the position for a moment, Noah straightened, looking immensely satisfied with himself. "There," he said once more, this time with a tone of finality. Then he raised his arms to his mother, ready to be carried again. Raymond Blackfeather's eyes had filled with tears. "The old greeting," he said softly, "the oldest one of all." Even Dr. Chen seemed moved, his scientific detachment temporarily forgotten. "I've never seen anything quite like this," he admitted. "Whatever happened here, it deserves to be respected." Ranger Wilson, practical as ever, brought them back to immediate concerns. "I still need those statements, and we should get Garrett to medical attention." As they prepared to leave, Olivia looked back at the clearing where it had all begun. The trampled grass, the mysterious arrangement of natural objects, the lingering sense of something miraculous having occurred. Camp Pinewood had always been a special place for her, a refuge from the complexities of the outside world. Now, it seemed imbued with an even deeper magic, a connection to something ancient and profound. Miss Reed, Dr. Chen approached her once more as they walked. "I've been thinking about your concerns. What if, instead of invasive observation, we created a protected area in this section of forest? No hunting, no trapping, minimal human disturbance. A sanctuary of sorts." Olivia considered this. "For the bears?" "For all of it," he replied, gesturing to encompass the forest. "Whatever happened here last night, it seems clear that this is a place worth preserving." For the first time, Olivia felt a genuine connection with the scientist. "I think that's something everyone could support." As they reached the vehicles, Raymond Blackfeather touched the wooden bear pendant now hanging around Olivia's neck. "Keep this close to your son," he advised. "And when he is old enough to understand, bring him back to these woods. The bears will remember him." "How can you be so sure?" she asked. The elder smiled, the creases around his eyes deepening. "Some connections once made cannot be broken, not by time, not by distance. Your son has been recognized by the forest. That is a rare and precious thing in this forgetful world." Noah had fallen asleep again, his small body heavy with exhaustion. As Olivia prepared to give her statement to the rangers, she found herself wondering what her son would remember of this extraordinary encounter. Would it fade like most early childhood memories, or would it somehow stay with him, shaping him in ways she couldn't yet imagine? The morning sun climbed higher, casting dappled shadows through the pine branches. In the distance, a raven called 3 times, its voice echoing across the clearing. Raymond tilted his head, listening, then nodded as if receiving confirmation of something important. "The message has been delivered," he said cryptically. Now we must decide what to do with it. As the camp slowly returned to its normal routines, breakfast being served, activities being planned, children chattering excitedly about bears and rangers and mysterious forest offerings, Olivia felt a profound sense of having been part of something larger than herself. The world seemed simultaneously more mysterious and more connected than it had been just 24 hours earlier. She looked down at her sleeping son, wondering what other wonders he might someday reveal to her. For now, though, she was content to hold him close, to feel his steady breathing against her chest, and to marvel at the unexpected gift they had been given, a glimpse beyond the veil that usually separated the human world from the wild one that existed alongside it. And somewhere in the depths of the forest, a father bear and his healing cub continued their unlikely journey together, carrying with them the scent and memory of a small human child who had reached across the boundaries of species with nothing but innocence and compassion to offer. 3 days passed at Camp Pinewood. The rangers had established a perimeter around the section of forest where the bears had last been seen, temporarily restricting hiking activities in that area. Dr. Chen had set up several motion-activated cameras with the rangers' permission, though Raymond Blackfeather had warned him gently that he might be disappointed with the results. Garrett, the poacher, had been treated for exposure and minor injuries at the regional hospital before being transferred to county jail. According to Ranger Wilson, who visited the camp with updates, he had been nearly incoherent during questioning, repeatedly claiming that the male bear had hunted him like a man would, not an animal. His campsite had yielded enough evidence, including the pelt of the mother bear, to charge him with multiple poaching offenses. Life at the camp had settled into an uneasy normalcy. The children continued their activities with renewed enthusiasm, many of them drawing pictures of bears and babies in unlikely friendship. Several parents had called after hearing garbled versions of the story, concerned for their children's safety, but Marcus had managed to reassure them that the incident had been handled professionally and the camp was secure. For Olivia, however, nothing felt quite the same. Noah had developed a new habit of staring into the forest for long periods, his small face intent and focused as if listening to voices no one else could hear. Each night, he insisted on sleeping with his window open despite the cool mountain air, and each morning, Olivia found him awake at dawn, pointing toward the trees and repeating his new favorite word, "Be." On the 4th morning after the encounter, Olivia woke to find Noah's bed empty. Panic seized her as she checked the cabin, calling his name with increasing desperation. He had been crawling for months, but had only recently begun pulling himself up to stand, using furniture for support. He couldn't have gone far, she reasoned, trying to calm her racing heart. "Noah," she called, throwing open the cabin door and scanning the misty morning grounds. The camp was still quiet, most of the children and counselors still asleep. "Noah, where are you?" Movement caught her eye. A small figure at the edge of the clearing, barely visible in the pre-dawn light. Noah was there, sitting upright on the grass, facing the forest. Relief flooded through her, quickly followed by confusion. How had he managed to get out of the cabin and across the grounds by himself? As she hurried toward him, she realized he wasn't alone. Emma was kneeling beside him, her back to Olivia, apparently speaking to the child in hushed tones. Olivia slowed her approach, not wanting to startle them. "Emma?" she called softly. "What are you doing out here so early?" Emma turned, and Olivia was struck by the strange expression on her face, a mixture of awe and disbelief. "I couldn't sleep," she explained, her voice slightly unsteady. "I was walking around the perimeter when I saw Noah sitting here, but Olivia, he wasn't alone when I first spotted him." A chill ran down Olivia's spine that had nothing to do with the morning air. "What do you mean?" Emma hesitated, glancing at Noah, who was happily playing with something in his hands. I'm not sure you'll believe me. After everything that's happened, I think I'm ready to believe almost anything," Olivia replied, kneeling down to check on her son. He was holding something she hadn't seen before, a small smooth stone of unusual coloration with bands of black and amber running through it. "There was a woman with him," Emma said finally, her words coming in a rush. "At least, I think it was a woman. She was wearing some kind of fringed leather clothing, and her hair was very long. I only saw her for a moment before she disappeared into the trees." Olivia stared at her in shock. "A woman? You mean someone from outside the camp? Did she try to take Noah?" Emma shook her head quickly. "No, nothing like that. She was sitting with him. It looked like she was showing him something." She pointed to the stone in Noah's hands. "I think she gave him that." Noah seemed completely untroubled, turning the strange stone over in his hands with evident fascination. "Pretty," he said clearly, his second recognizable word. Olivia took the stone from him gently, examining it more closely. It was polished to a high shine, as if it had been handled for many years, and it felt unnaturally warm against her palm. "We need to tell Ranger Wilson about this," she decided. "If there's someone wandering around the camp at dawn." "I don't think she's going to show up on any ranger patrols," Emma said softly. "Olivia, she didn't seem—" She struggled to find the right words. "When she saw me, she stood up, and for just a second I thought her shadow wasn't human." "What do you mean?" "Her shadow looked like a bear standing upright." Emma whispered, her eyes wide. "I know how that sounds, but after everything we've seen—" She trailed off, looking toward the forest. "There's something else. While Noah was sitting with her, he was making those same sounds Raymond taught him, that old greeting, as he called it." Olivia felt lightheaded, her understanding of reality shifting once again beneath her. She looked down at the strange stone in her hand, then at her son, who was now reaching for it with insistent fingers. "Bay stone," he declared. "Bay mama." "What should we do?" Emma asked, her voice steadier now. "Should we call Raymond?" Olivia considered this. The elder had left his contact information with them, encouraging them to reach out if anything unusual continued to unfold. This certainly qualified. But another part of her, a protective, maternal instinct, hesitated. Noah seemed unharmed, even happy. The stone, whatever it was, appeared to be simply a pretty rock, and the woman, if she existed at all, had done nothing threatening. "Let's wait," she decided finally. "I'll keep a closer eye on Noah, not let him out of my sight. If anything else happens, then we'll call Raymond." Emma nodded, though she looked uncertain. "Have you noticed anything else strange since that night? With Noah, I mean?" Olivia hesitated, then decided to confide in her friend. "He watches the forest constantly, and last night I found him tracing the bear pendant Raymond gave us over and over with his fingers, almost like he was in a trance. And," she paused, almost embarrassed to continue, "and," Emma prompted gently, "I've been having dreams about the bears, about the forest, but they don't feel like normal dreams. They feel like messages." Olivia shook her head, frustrated by her inability to describe the sensation accurately. "In the dreams, I'm walking through the trees, but I'm not myself. I'm seeing through different eyes, from a different height. Everything smells more intense, more meaningful." Emma didn't look as surprised as Olivia had expected. "I've been having strange dreams, too," she admitted. Not about bears, but about the forest. In mine, the trees are talking to each other. I can hear them like a humming beneath the ground. She shrugged self-consciously. Probably just our brains processing everything that happened. Noah had begun to fuss, reaching for the stone that Olivia was still holding. She returned it to him, watching as he immediately calmed, holding it against his cheek with a contented sigh. "Let's head back," she suggested. "The breakfast bell will ring soon and I need to get him changed." As they walked back toward the cabins, Olivia found herself constantly looking over her shoulder, half expecting to see the mysterious woman Emma had described. The forest edge remained still and empty in the growing light, yet somehow she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Not with hostility, but with an ancient, patient interest. The day progressed normally, with swimming lessons in the morning and a nature hike along the safe perimeter in the afternoon. Noah remained at Olivia's side, the strange stone now safely tucked in her pocket after he had nearly swallowed it during lunch. He had protested when she took it away, but was quickly distracted by a colorful butterfly that seemed to follow him wherever he went. As evening approached, Olivia received an unexpected call on the camp's main line. It was Dr. Chen, his voice tight with barely controlled excitement. "Ms. Reed, something extraordinary has happened," he said without preamble. "One of our cameras captured the bears." Olivia's pulse quickened. "Are they all right? How's the cub's paw?" "The cub appears to be healing well. Your first aid seems to have prevented infection, but that's not why I'm calling." He paused, and she could hear him taking a deep breath. "The footage shows something unexplainable. I wonder if you might be able to come to the ranger station to view it. I've already called Raymond Blackfeather." Olivia glanced at Noah, who was playing contentedly with blocks on the office floor. "I'd have to bring my son. I don't have anyone to watch him right now." "Actually, I think that might be best," Dr. Chen replied, surprising her, given his connection to the bears. After arranging for Marcus to oversee the evening activities, Olivia drove the camp's utility vehicle to the ranger station about 5 miles down the mountain road. Noah sat in his car seat, babbling happily, and occasionally saying "bee" whenever they passed a particularly dense section of forest. At the station they were met by an unusual assembly. Dr. Chen, looking both exhausted and exhilarated. Ranger Wilson, her practical demeanor somewhat subdued. And Raymond Blackfeather, who smiled warmly when he saw Noah and immediately approached to greet the child in the same rhythmic sounds they had shared before. Noah responded eagerly, adding new sounds that made Raymond's eyebrows rise in surprise. "He's learning quickly," the elder observed. "The old language comes naturally to him." Dr. Chen cleared his throat. "Ms. Reed, thank you for coming. What we're about to show you, well, I've spent my entire career studying wildlife behavior, and I've never seen anything like it." They moved to a small conference room where a laptop was set up. Noah immediately became restless, squirming in Olivia's arms and pointing at the screen even before anything was displayed. "Bay," he insisted. "Bay there." Ranger Wilson started the video without comment. The footage, captured in the infrared spectrum due to the low light conditions of early dawn, showed a section of forest not far from where the bears had disappeared that first night. For several seconds, nothing moved except the gentle swaying of branches in the morning breeze. Then, from the right side of the frame, the adult bear appeared. It moved with deliberate care, stopping occasionally to sniff the air or examine something on the ground. The cub followed close behind, its bandaged paw clearly visible but now bearing weight, suggesting the healing process was well underway. "This was captured yesterday morning, just after sunrise," Dr. Chen explained. "About a quarter mile from the camp boundary." The bears continued across the frame, then stopped near the center as if sensing the camera. The adult bear raised its head, looking directly at the lens with uncanny awareness. Then, to Olivia's astonishment, it rose onto its hind legs. Not in a threatening posture, but in a stance that appeared almost deliberate, ceremonial. "Watch closely," Dr. Chen instructed, his voice barely above a whisper. The standing bear raised its right paw to its chest, then extended it outward in a gesture that looked disturbingly human. The cub, still on all fours, circled its father 3 times before sitting at his feet. Then, in perfect synchronization, both bears turned their heads to look at something off-camera. The adult bear lowered itself back to all fours, and both animals backed away respectfully as a third figure entered the frame from the left. Olivia gasped. It was a woman, exactly as Emma had described, dressed in fringed leather clothing with long, dark hair that fell well past her waist. Her movements were fluid and graceful as she approached the bears without any sign of fear. When she reached them, she knelt, placing one hand on the cub's head and the other on the adult bear's muzzle. "Who is that?" Olivia whispered, her arms tightening around Noah, who was watching the screen with rapt attention. Raymond Blackfeather's face had gone very still. "They call her the bear woman in our stories. She walks between the animal world and the human one, belonging fully to neither." Dr. Chen, despite his scientific background, seemed at a loss for rational explanation. "We've checked the footage for signs of tampering or digital manipulation. There are none. This is raw video from the camera." On the screen, the woman rose from her kneeling position. For a brief moment, she turned toward the camera, though her face remained partially shadowed by her hair. Then she made a gesture similar to the one the bear had made, hand to heart, then extended outward. "That's a greeting in the old sign language," Raymond said quietly. "It means, 'I see you with good intent.'" The woman then placed something on the ground between the bears before backing away. The adult bear approached the object, sniffed it, then picked it up gently in its mouth. As it raised its head, the item became visible. A small dark stone, similar in appearance to the one Noah had been playing with that morning. "Bay stone!" Noah exclaimed, pointing excitedly at the screen. The woman retreated into the shadows of the forest, the bears following after her with unhurried steps. Within moments, all 3 had vanished from the camera's view, leaving only the empty clearing and the gentle movement of branches in the breeze. Ranger Wilson stopped the video. The room remained silent for several long seconds, each person processing what they had witnessed in their own way. "I've sent this footage to 2 colleagues at the university," Dr. Chen said finally. "One specializes in digital forensics, the other in cultural anthropology. Neither has a rational explanation for what we're seeing." "Not all explanations are rational, Doctor," Raymond replied without judgment. "Some are spiritual, some are ancestral. The boundaries between human and animal were not always as rigid as they have become." Noah was becoming increasingly agitated in Olivia's arms, reaching toward the now blank screen and repeating "Bay stone" with mounting frustration. On impulse, she reached into her pocket and withdrew the smooth-banded stone Emma had found him playing with. The moment it was visible, Noah calmed, taking it from her with a satisfied expression. "May I?" Raymond asked, extending his hand toward the stone. Noah looked at him solemnly for a moment, then relinquished his treasure. The elder examined it carefully, turning it over in his weathered fingers. "Bear amber," he said at last. "Very rare, very old. Our people used it in healing ceremonies, especially for children who were ill or troubled in spirit." "Bear amber," Dr. Chen echoed. "I'm not familiar with that term. It forms where ancient bears made their dens over many generations, Raymond explained. The resins from pine bedding material combine with other elements. It's not true amber, but we call it that for its color and properties. He returned the stone to Noah, who immediately pressed it against his chest with a contented sigh. The woman in the video, Olivia said, struggling to organize her thoughts. Emma saw her with Noah this morning. She must have given him the stone then. Ranger Wilson leaned forward, her practical nature reasserting itself. Are you saying a stranger was in the camp with your child? That's a serious security concern, regardless of any unusual circumstances. I don't think we're dealing with ordinary human security concerns here, Raymond said gently. The bear woman doesn't follow human boundaries or rules. She appears when she's needed, where she's needed. But needed for what? Olivia asked, feeling both frightened and strangely exhilarated by the unfolding mystery. What does she want with my son? Raymond considered this carefully before answering. In our traditions, when a child forms a connection with an animal guardian, it marks them for a special path. Sometimes as a healer, sometimes as a storyteller or keeper of knowledge. The bear woman appears to guide such children, to help them understand their gift. You're suggesting some kind of spiritual apprenticeship? Dr. Chen asked, his scientific skepticism warring with the evidence before his eyes. For a 1-year-old? Not exactly, Raymond replied. More like an awakening, a recognition. The teaching comes later, when he's ready. Ranger Wilson rubbed her temples, clearly struggling with how to process these events through her framework of rules and procedures. I need to file a report about this, but I have no idea what to write that won't sound completely insane. Perhaps it's best to focus on the tangible elements, Dr. Chen suggested. The bears are healing well. There's evidence of unusual behavior patterns worth studying further, and there's an unidentified person of interest who needs to be... He trailed off, recognizing the futility of trying to approach the bear woman as a trespasser or person of interest. Noah had begun to doze in Olivia's arms, the stone still clutched in his small hand. Despite the strangeness of the situation, she felt an unexpected sense of calm. Whatever was happening, it didn't feel threatening to her son. If anything, he seemed more balanced, more content since the bear encounter than ever before. What should I do? She asked Raymond directly. As his mother? The elder smiled, the creases around his eyes deepening. Let him lead the way, watch for signs. The bear woman will not harm him, quite the opposite. She protects those she chooses. He reached out to touch the wooden bear pendant still hanging around Olivia's neck. Keep this with him. It will help him remember his connection when he's older and the doubts of the modern world begin to crowd in. And the stone? A gift of power. A reminder of where he's been welcomed. Let him keep it close. As they prepared to leave the ranger station, Dr. Chen approached Olivia once more. Miss Reed, I know this must be overwhelming for you. If there's anything I can do to help, any resources I can provide, please don't hesitate to ask. She was touched by his sincerity. Despite his scientific background, he was clearly trying to remain open to experiences that defied his training. Actually, there is one thing. Could you recommend some books about bears? Not just scientific texts, but stories, folklore, anything that might help me understand what Noah might be experiencing. Dr. Chen nodded eagerly. I'll compile a reading list and send it to the camp, and... He hesitated before continuing. I wonder if you might consider allowing me to visit occasionally, to observe Noah's development. From a respectful distance, of course. Olivia considered this. As long as it doesn't interfere with his normal childhood. He may have had an extraordinary experience, but he's still just a little boy. Of course, Dr. Chen agreed quickly. My interest is purely in understanding this remarkable connection, not in turning him into a research subject. As they drove back to Camp Pinewood through the gathering dusk, Noah slept peacefully in his car seat, the bare, amber stone still clutched in his small hand. Olivia found herself watching the forest with new eyes, seeing not just trees and shadows but a living world filled with presences and possibilities she had never before considered. The camp came into view, its windows glowing with warm light against the darkening sky. Despite the extraordinary events unfolding around them, it still felt like a sanctuary, though now she understood it was situated on a boundary between worlds, a place where the veil between human understanding and wild wisdom had grown momentarily thin. She recalled Raymond's words about Noah. Let him lead the way. It wasn't going to be easy, raising a child who had been recognized by the forest, as the elder had put it. There would be challenges ahead, moments when Noah's connection to something ancient and wild might set him apart from others. But there would also be wonder and wisdom, and a depth of understanding that few were privileged to experience. As she parked the vehicle and carefully lifted her sleeping son from his seat, Olivia made a silent promise, not just to protect him, but to honor the path that had opened before him, wherever it might lead. The summer session at Camp Pinewood continued for another 3 weeks, settling into a rhythm that accommodated the new awareness of the forest and its inhabitants. The rangers maintained their perimeter, though no further signs of the adult bear or cub were captured on Dr. Chen's cameras. The mysterious woman did not appear again, at least not where any of the counselors could see her, though occasionally children would return from activities near the forest edge talking excitedly about the pretty lady who knows about bears. Noah continued to develop at a remarkable pace. His vocabulary expanded daily, though "be" remained his favorite word, applied not just to the bears themselves, but to anything connected with the forest. The bare amber stone became his constant companion, and Olivia had attached it to a small, sturdy pouch that he wore around his neck alongside Raymond's wooden pendant. One evening, as the camp prepared for its final campfire ceremony of the session, Marcus approached Olivia with an unusual request. "The children want to do something special," he explained, helping her set up benches around the fire pit. "They've been working on it all week, a play about Noah and the bears. They want to perform it tonight, but I wanted to check with you first." Olivia was touched by the gesture. "That's very sweet of them. Noah might be a bit young to understand, but I'd love to see it." Marcus looked relieved. "They've put a lot of effort into it. Emma's been helping them with costumes. Wait until you see the bear outfits they've made from old sleeping bags." The performance turned out to be both heartwarming and surprisingly moving. The older children had written a simple script retelling the encounter, with a 10-year-old girl playing Olivia, a counselor playing Marcus, and a stuffed doll standing in for Noah. 2 children, wearing brown sleeping bags with attached ears, enthusiastically played the bears, while another, draped in a fringed blanket with her hair loose, made a brief appearance as the mysterious woman from the forest. What struck Olivia most, however, was how the children had captured the emotional core of the experience. Not just the fear or the danger, but the moment of connection, the bridge of compassion that had formed between species. They understood, in their innocent way, that something magical had occurred, something worthy of remembrance and celebration. Noah watched the performance with unusual focus for a child his age, occasionally pointing and exclaiming, "Bay!" when the bear characters appeared. When the play concluded, he clapped his hands in delight, joining the general applause that echoed through the clearing. As the applause died down, a strange hush fell over the gathering, The children froze, their eyes widening as they stared at something beyond the circle of firelight. Olivia turned, her heart racing, to see what had captured their attention. At the edge of the clearing, barely visible in the flickering light, stood two figures, one large, one small. The adult bear and the cub had returned, watching the celebration from a respectful distance. The cub's paw was fully healed, no trace of the bandage remaining, and both animals looked healthy and strong in the muted glow of the fire. No one moved, no one spoke. Even the youngest children seemed to understand the gravity and privilege of the moment. Noah, however, had no such reservations. He squirmed down from Olivia's lap and, before she could stop him, toddled forward on unsteady legs, his first true steps without support. A collective gasp rose from the gathered campers and counselors as the small boy made his way toward the massive predators. Olivia started to rise, her maternal instinct screaming for her to protect her child, but Marcus gently caught her arm. "Look at them," he whispered. "They're not threatening. They came to say goodbye." Indeed, there was no aggression in the bear's posture. They waited patiently as Noah approached, his steps becoming steadier with each foot forward. When he reached them, the cub moved to meet him, pressing its nose gently against his outstretched hand in a gesture of recognition and friendship. The adult bear remained where it was, its dark eyes reflecting the distant firelight. It made a soft huffing sound that carried clearly across the now silent clearing, not a growl, but something almost like speech, a communication intended for all who were present. Noah patted the cub's head, giggling when it licked his fingers. Then, with a wisdom far beyond his years, he stepped back and made the gesture Raymond had taught him, hand to heart, then extended outward. "Goodbye, bear," he said clearly, his voice carrying in the still night air. As if understanding perfectly, the bears turned and melted back into the darkness of the forest. The spell that had held everyone motionless broke, and excited whispers erupted around the campfire. Noah toddled back to Olivia, his face shining with joy. "Bay, go home," he told her solemnly. "Bay, happy now." Olivia gathered him into her arms, tears stinging her eyes. "Yes, sweetie, the bears are going home, and they're happy because you helped them." That night, as she tucked Noah into bed, he fell asleep immediately, more peaceful than she had seen him since the initial encounter. Perhaps it was the closure of the goodbye, or perhaps it was simply the natural exhaustion of a child who had taken his first steps and experienced more wonder in one summer than most people encounter in a lifetime. Olivia sat beside his bed for a long time, watching his gentle breathing, and the way his small fingers curled around the bare amber stone even in sleep. Outside the cabin window, the forest stood silent under a canopy of stars. She no longer feared it as she once had, not because it was any less wild or potentially dangerous, but because she now understood it differently. It wasn't simply a collection of trees and animals, but a living system of relationships and connections, of which humans were just one part. As she finally rose to prepare for bed herself, a soft tapping came at the cabin door. Opening it, she found Emma standing outside, a strange expression on her face. "You need to see this," the counselor whispered, careful not to wake Noah. "Everyone does." Curious, Olivia followed her outside. The night was clear and cool, the camp quiet except for the distant hooting of an owl. Emma led her to the main clearing, where several other counselors had already gathered, all looking upward with expressions of awe. Olivia tilted her head back and gasped. Above them, the northern lights shimmered across the sky, curtains of green and blue light dancing among the stars. It was an extremely rare sight in these latitudes, especially in summer. "It's beautiful," she breathed. watching the celestial display ripple and flow. Raymond said it might happen, Marcus told her, his voice hushed with wonder. He said when the great bear walks the forest and the boundaries between worlds thin, the sky sometimes dances in celebration. As they watched, the light seemed to form shapes, running figures that might have been bears, dancing forms that could have been human, all blending and separating in an endless, silent celebration overhead. Whether it was truly a message or simply their minds finding patterns in random beauty, it felt like a perfect conclusion to the extraordinary events of the summer. The next morning, as the camp prepared for the arrival of parents and the departure of campers, Olivia found a small package outside her cabin door. It was wrapped in birch bark and tied with sinew, with no note or indication of who had left it. Inside was a small book bound in leather, its pages filled with handwritten stories and drawings. Tales of the bear woman, of children chosen by the forest, of the ancient days when humans and animals spoke the same language. On the final page was a simple message in elegant script. For Noah, when he is ready to remember. Until then, keep it safe for him. It was signed with a single symbol that resembled a bear track. Olivia tucked the book carefully into her bag, a treasure to be preserved until her son was old enough to understand his own story. As she helped pack the last of their belongings, Noah stood at the cabin window, the bare amber stone pressed against the glass as he gazed out at the forest. "Bay there," he said, pointing into the green depths. "Bay waiting." "Yes," Olivia agreed, understanding that this was both an ending and a beginning. "They'll be waiting, and someday we'll come back." As they left Camp Pinewood that afternoon, joining the procession of vehicles heading down the mountain, Noah fell asleep in his car seat. In his dreams, he walked on 4 paws through dappled forest light, guided by a woman with long dark hair who taught him the language of rustling leaves and flowing water. He would not remember these dreams when he woke, not consciously, but they would remain within him, shaping him in subtle ways as he grew. And deep in the forest that had been their temporary home, the bears continued their own journey. The father and cub bonded by unusual circumstances, protected by an ancient presence that moved between worlds. Sometimes, when the wind was right, they would catch the lingering scent of the human child who had reached across boundaries with innocent hands, offering help where others might have offered harm. In that offering, that simple, instinctive act of compassion, a connection had been forged that would endure long after the summer faded to memory. For in the wild places of the world, where the old magic still runs deep in root and stone, such connections are never truly broken. They merely wait, patient as the forest itself, for the right moment to be rediscovered. 10 years later, Olivia stood at the edge of a different forest, watching her son carefully. Noah, now 11, had grown into a thoughtful boy with quiet confidence and an uncanny ability to connect with animals. The bare amber stone still hung around his neck, alongside Raymond's wooden pendant. Treasures he refused to be parted from, even though he couldn't fully explain why they mattered so much. They had returned to Camp Pinewood for the first time since that remarkable summer. The camp looked smaller than Olivia remembered, the cabins weathered by a decade of mountain seasons. But the forest seemed vaster, deeper, more alive than ever. "It feels like coming home," Noah said softly, his eyes fixed on the tree line. "I've dreamed about this place." Olivia squeezed his shoulder gently. "I know, sweetheart." They had come at Raymond Blackfeather's invitation. The elder, now well into his 80s, had written to them unexpectedly, saying simply that it was time. Olivia had finally shown Noah the leather-bound book of stories that had been left for him all those years ago. He had read it cover to cover in a single night, his expression growing more certain with each page. "I remember them," he had told her afterward. "Not clearly, not like regular memories, but I remember." Now they waited at the forest edge as the sun began to set, painting the sky in familiar hues of orange and pink. Raymond had told them to come at dusk, to the exact spot where the bears had first appeared. Noah stood perfectly still, his hand resting on the amber stone, his breathing slow and deliberate. "There," he whispered suddenly, pointing to a shadow between the trees. "Someone's watching us." Olivia squinted but could see nothing in the gathering darkness. "Are you sure?" Instead of answering, Noah stepped forward, his movements confident and unhesitating. At the boundary between clearing and forest, he stopped. Slowly, deliberately, he raised his hand to his heart, then extended it outward, the ancient greeting he had somehow never forgotten. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, like an answer to a long-asked question, came a soft huffing sound from the darkness. A large shape emerged, an enormous black bear with a distinctive white patch on its chest. Older now, but still powerful, still majestic. Behind it followed a younger bear, fully grown but smaller, the cub, now an adult itself. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. After all these years they had returned, or perhaps they had never truly left this place that existed somewhere between the human world and the wild one. Noah showed no fear as the bears approached. "Hello, old friends," he said quietly. "I came back, just like I promised." The older bear rose onto its hind legs, not in threat but in recognition, towering above the boy who had once been a baby. For a heartbeat, its shadow seemed to shift and change, taking on a form that was not entirely bear-like, not entirely human. And behind it, barely visible in the forest shadows, stood a woman with long dark hair and fringed leather clothing, her smile as ancient and knowing as the trees themselves. Noah raised his hand once more in greeting. "I'm ready to learn now," he said simply. The bear woman nodded once, then turned and disappeared into the forest depths. The bears lowered themselves to all fours and followed, but not before the younger one, once a wounded cub, gently nudged Noah's outstretched hand with its nose. "Go," Olivia whispered, understanding finally what this moment meant. "I'll be waiting here." Noah looked back at his mother, his face serene in the fading light. "Don't worry, Mom. The forest remembers those it has welcomed. I'll be safe." Then he stepped across the threshold, following the bears into the trees. Not running away, not leaving forever, but taking the first steps on the path that had been waiting for him since that summer long ago, a path between worlds, guided by creatures who walked on the boundaries between wild and tame, ancient and new. Olivia watched until she could no longer see him, then settled on a fallen log to wait. The stars appeared one by one overhead, familiar constellations keeping her company in the gathering darkness. She wasn't afraid, not anymore. Some connections, once made, could never be broken. Not by time, not by distance, not even by the boundaries that seemed to separate the human heart from the wild wisdom of the forest. And in that knowledge, she found peace.